Good morning, everyone. I'm Terrence DeFranco, the president of the College of St. Rose, and we are deeply grateful that you are here with us this morning and that we have joined the College of St. Rose and Albany County to gather together for healing and for reflection and for conversation. In particular, I want to welcome you to the Hubbard Interfaith Sanctuary, a beacon of light and hope in our region, and I really believe in our world. We are in mourning after the events of the last week and the violence and hatred that have once again revealed terrible problems in our nation. This sanctuary and our institution proclaim a different set of values: understanding, kindness, courage, and belief in human capacity. They are why St. Rose is the place where people come together in the most tragic of times, and why people feel safe and comfortable here talking about the most difficult of topics. St. Rose was founded as part of a mission of caring for our neighbors and creating an environment where people of all backgrounds and faith traditions can come together to celebrate our similarities as well as our differences. At the same time that we gather to grieve over recent tragedies, we also need to model responsible ways of engaging in the civic life of our nation and our state and our region. We are really thankful for our long partnership with Albany County that has enabled us to join with you this morning in the hope that we may begin the journey toward healing. It is now my honor to invite Albany County Executive Daniel P. McCoy to the podium. Thank you.
I'd like to thank the President for not just your leadership on this, but on your leadership with all the students that come here, because it's just not students from across the state of New York, students across this great nation, and international students. So thank you for your leadership in always St. Rose being on the forefront of issues here in the city of Albany, but especially in the county. So as county executive, thank you so much. Kind of sad that we're here, doing healing moments again, what's going on in this country. It's sad. If you look at the Tree of Life, the 11 that got killed in the synagogue, and what really hurt me the most is when I saw a 97-year-old lady, and I read her story, and she got through the Holocaust, and she got through what no one should ever have to live through in their lifetime. Comes to this country to make a better life. And at 97 years old, to be killed like that is just, how much can someone take in their life? How much pain and suffering can someone have? And I heard she was like a young 97. She was energetic. She was in the community. She was doing different things. It just makes you take a step back and wonder sometimes. We always say, whatever you believe in, God, whatever your religion is, you sit back and you try to say there's a reason for this. And it's tough. When I looked at the statistics around this great country, it was alarming. In 2016 and 2017, hate crimes went up 57% since they've been recording this stuff. 57% in 2016, 2017. In New York State alone, in that same time period, we went up 90%. 90%. And it's alarming because, I look at the different generations, how we grew up, and how things were installed, and you look at our great history in this country, but we look at our bad history in this country, and you don't want to repeat them same mistakes. And you teach tolerance, and you teach your kids better. And I see in the generation with my 3 children, and especially my new one at Albany High School, that they kind of look at us and they go, what are you talking about? We don't have them issues. But they're there. And you have to talk about it because we'll repeat history if we don't. And the thing I love about this country the most is that you can believe in whatever you want to believe in. You can be whatever religion you want to be, but live in freedom. Live in peace. You can agree to disagree with your neighbor, but still live in peace. And Albany County is better than this. And I believe we are the best county in the state of New York, if not in this nation. And we need to lead by example. We need to come together like this today's forum to discuss it, to make people feel uncomfortable, but talk about what's the root of the problem. And the only way we're going to do that is by these leaders here to the right of me, the faith leaders of their community that sees firsthand what's going on in their respective places of worship, what's going on day to day, or hate crimes, or people, give them a hard time when they pull in just to go pray, or don't like the way you dress. I was saying earlier, one of the great things I get to do every now and then is when the federal court building gives me a call and one of the judges asks me to come down to welcome new citizens. And I really enjoy it. And it's a great ceremony, and if you've ever been there, you should go down to see what it's like for these new citizens to become citizens of this great country of ours. But I always say to them, don't change the way you are. Don't change your clothes because you think this is how America is. This is what you're supposed to be like to be American. They go, and definitely introduce your food culture. And I said, if you want to cook, I'll come over to your house for dinner. I'll try it. But that's what makes this country so great, is we're a country of many. And we're a country of many because of who we are. And we have to be better than this. And we have to have better tolerance. And I don't want to take up any more time. I really didn't want to talk because this is an issue that, unfortunately, we're going to have to go through. But I will say this to the media. I will say to people in here. Let's not talk about the person that did this crime. Let's take and talk about the victim's life. And let's talk about that person and continue their memory on, their legacy on. Don't let their legacy end because someone had so much hate in their heart that that's the way they ended it for them. Let's remember them for the community leaders they were. These are 11 at the Tree of Life were the pillars of that synagogue, that were the leaders that people or the parishioners looked up to. Let's remember them for that, not remember them for the tragedy way they lost their lives. And that's what I put out to everybody, the challenge. Pick one person and just get to know their life and the difference that they made in their community. Remember them, not the person that did this. But sorry, I wasn't going to even ramble on. I was going to stick to my notes and just continue on. But I do want to say to the panelists, thank you for taking the time out of your busy day. And thank you for being the leaders in your community. But most importantly, to see the diverse leadership that we have up here to talk about everything and everyone. We're not a perfect nation, but we can be. And we can be a perfect county if we work together and we tolerate one another and just respect one another. I mean, that's it. I don't agree with a lot of people's views, but I don't hate them. I say that's what this country was built on. This is why I went to war and served in a combat zone, was to give people the right to do whatever they want to do. But do it respectfully and without hurting anybody, and especially without killing anybody. That's what it's about. But I do want to bring up the cantor to come up. She's going to be our moderator. Thank you. And I got to tell you, you do have a beautiful voice. You blew me away the other day, so I just want to say thank you.
I'm Cantor Jody Scheckter, and I'm one of the co-clergy at Congregation Beth Emeth here in Albany. A couple of pieces of housekeeping before we get started. Please remember to silence your cell phones. And photos are allowed during the discussion, but please be cognizant that this is a sacred space. So if you're taking pictures, just be respectful of movement and of disturbing the mood of the conversation. I would like to begin with a prayer. As many of you know, the service that was going on in the congregation in Pittsburgh last Saturday included a bris, a brit milah. This is not only the circumcision of a baby boy, but the time when he receives his Hebrew name. And my friend Zev Steinberg wrote a poem which I have adapted to begin this morning's program. This was dedicated to the baby who was to be named at the Tree of Life Synagogue. Sweet baby boy, what is your name? Is your name Shalom? Oh, how we long for peace. We long to be whole again. I hope your name will be Shalom. Sweet baby boy, what is your name? Is your name Nahum, comfort? Will you come to comfort us in our grief? I hope your name is Nahum. Sweet baby boy, what is your name? Is your name Ezra, help? We need so much help. The burden we are carrying is too heavy to bear. I hope your name is Ezra. Sweet baby boy, what is your name? Is your name Raphael? Our broken hearts and souls need so much healing. I hope your name is Raphael. You should have been carried high into the congregation on Shabbat morning, passed from loving hands to loving hands on a cushioned pillow to receive your Jewish name. Instead, your elders fell and were carried out on stretchers in plastic bags with their name on a tag. Sweet baby boy, what is your name? Is your name Moshe, Moses? Our unbearable anguish demands justice. We need a master of the law. I hope your name is Moshe. Sweet baby boy, what is your name? Is your name Ariel? We need the ferocious strength of lions to protect our people so this never happens again. I hope your name is Ariel. Sweet baby boy, what is your name? Is your name Barak? We need courageous warriors to vanquish our enemies. I hope your name is Barak. The blood on Shabbat morning was supposed to be covenantal, not sacrilegious. Sacramental, not sacrificial. Sacred, not unholy. The tears were supposed to be of boundless joy, not bottomless sorrow. The cries were supposed to be mazel tov, not the mourner's Kaddish. Sweet baby boy, what is your name? Is your name Simcha? Joy? We need an end to our sadness by bringing joy into our world. I hope you are Simcha. Sweet baby boy, what is your name? Is your name Yaron? We need an end to mourning by bringing song into our lives. I hope your name is Yaron. Sweet baby boy, what is your name? Is your name Matan? Gift? We need the gift of children who will bring a better tomorrow. I hope you are Matan. Sweet baby boy, what is your name? Take 1,000 names. Be peace and comfort. Be our help and healing. Be justice, strength, and courage. Be joy and song, and be a gift to the world. Be every good name and every good thing. And sweet baby boy, take one more name, if you will, because I hope you will be blessed with a long, blissful, beautiful, and meaningful life, like a tree of life dropping seeds and bearing new fruit. Let your name be Chaim, life. Amen. Friends, it is my great pleasure to introduce the people to my right, the people on the panel, who will be not really answering questions, but really engaging in discussion from their point of view about how we come together as a community in the face of what is going on in the world around us. Immediately to my right is Rabbi Deborah Gordon of Congregation Bereth Shalom in Troy. Sitting next to her, Reverend Manchin Paul Naiman of the Tendai Buddhist Institute. To his right is Imam Dr. Abdul Qadir Elmi at Al-Salam Mosque. Reverend Jim Kane, the Director of Ecumenical and Interreligious Affairs of the Roman Catholic Diocese. Thank you to all of you for being here. Friends, after the gunning down of 2 African Americans in a grocery store, allegedly after the gunmen could not access their church, and then the murder of 11 Jews praying on the Sabbath in their synagogue in Pittsburgh, what words of comfort and explanation have you offered to your congregants? And what action, if any, have you taken or are you taking in your congregations or communities to support the grieving communities around you?
Our Bishop of the Roman Catholic Diocese of Albany, Edward Scharfenberger, requested that in all the churches of the diocese, the statement that he issued be read from the pulpit. And I just want to quote the concluding part of that statement because I think it sets the tone for why we're here this morning. Quote, "We will continue to be a force for good, replacing hatred with love, evil with goodness, and curses with blessings. Our faith in a loving God who created us all reminds us that we belong to each other as members of one human family, summoned by a God who loves each one of us personally and unconditionally. We will not let hate win." Edward Scharfenberger, Bishop of Albany.
Well, I'm reminding my congregation and the congregations throughout North America the Buddhist notion of deep interconnectedness. And that deep interconnectedness has to do with the idea that when we look at the universe, as wide as it is, that we're all products of that universe. We're not separated from it, we're part of it. And within our tradition, we didn't create the universe, but we're nonetheless a part of that whole. And that means, in fact, as it was taught millennia ago, that means that for each of us, every atom in the universe is part of who we are. And we have all, when we talk about rebirth and reincarnation, which many people, I think, totally misunderstand, we're talking about the fact that we're reusing all the atoms that have ever been there before. It's not a singular event. Each of us is unique. When we look around the world, around this room, we see the uniqueness of every individual. And yet, every individual is interconnected by the very matter that they form. And when we think about those who we lost in Pittsburgh, it's easy to say, those are my brothers, those are my sisters. That's true, but that's easy to say. But to realize that the loss is no less because they weren't from our tribe. So, excuse me. I apologize. The loss is great. Sorry.
Comfort is hard to come by. Different Jewish congregations have responded according to their nature, according to the culture of that congregation. In my congregation, we opened the sanctuary on Sunday morning after I stayed up way late Saturday night putting together songs, poems, prayers, because I didn't know what I would need. And we had congregants, we had people I've never seen before who found us on Facebook. We had 3 Protestant ministers come before their service and 2 more come after their service. We had Jews, we had non-Jews, we had religious people, we had atheists, and we spent the time talking and listening. We spent the time singing and praying and being silent. What happened in Pittsburgh was not simply an anti-Semitic act. It was deeply fueled by anti-immigrant sentiment. The 2 shoppers in Kroger who were gunned down in Louisville were not killed because of what church they go to. They were killed because they're black. For myself, part of the comfort is simply that I routinely think about 3,000 years of human history. You go back, your tradition goes back farther, I believe, but we all have the opportunity, because of how we've chosen to make our tradition at the center of our lives, to pay attention to the fact that this is not new. And perversely, that is a comfort. We have seen this before. We'll see it again. God willing, not in our lifetime. The reason that hatred and violence toward the other surprises so many of us is because we grew up in a time when it seemed like, as I have heard from over the last 2 years, mostly from white Jewish women, it seemed like we were past all that. Okay, but if you didn't grow up with that level of privilege, you knew we weren't past it. We're human. We're not going to stop being human. But we know that the values that we have held in the good times are the same ones we need to hold on to in the bad time. In Jewish tradition, one of the values is arguing. I don't know if you know the saying, 2 Jews, 3 opinions. There were 2 rabbis who are recorded in the Talmud. So the Talmud was put together about 1,500 years ago. Rabbi Yonatan and Reish Lakish. They were best of friends. Religiously, they didn't agree on anything. And when one of them died, the other one said, my critical thinking is never going to be as good as it was, because my perspective was sharpened by the arguments I had with my friend. And that understanding of the importance of disagreement and the humility to recognize that nobody has all of the answers is one of the things that I pull from my tradition and I try to offer to folks that I see.
When they get their citizenship, he shares few words of wisdom with them. We give them words of wisdom. What are these? The words are, now you are expected to be a citizen, a person who adds to the well-being, to the safety, to the defense of this country. And you have to, instead, you have 2 choices. One is to add to the suffering and the confusion and the hate and go to that side. The other side is to become a righteous person, a pious person. And what does righteous and pious people do? In our religion, it tells us, and I'm sure every religion, that when you see something wrong, stand up. Speak about it. Do something that you can do without stepping out of the boundaries of the law of the land. This is some of the wisdom we give them. And when this happened, that Saturday night, I don't know whether you know or not, but we pray 8 o'clock every night. And at that time, we spoke about the people that if you have a neighbor, condole them, comfort them, say, ask them if they need any help that you can give them. And if they want to cry with you, let them cry with you. Have a cup of coffee and give them the chance to cry. So indeed, unfortunately, the hate crimes are rising up in our country. And I don't know what we can do. Maybe we elect people like McCoy. I'm not saying this because I have to be funny because we are in a grief state, but somebody who, when things happen, at least opens a dialogue. Let's get people together and, ponder upon it. So we thank you, Madam McCoy. We have to elect people like that. We have to elect people who would legislate something against rhetoric that pushes some people to do what they are doing. We have to elect people who would legislate some sort of securities for anywhere, doesn't matter, whether it's churches or schools or any place where somebody can take mass lives. People who do that. And unfortunately, it will come again. I'm sad to say that. But it will happen again because unless hate is eradicated, it will happen again, no doubt about it. But we need our lawmakers to come up with things that can protect people from losing their lives while they are worshiping. I don't know whether any one of you knows, but there are companies now that make money from offering security to places of worship. There are companies and firms that come to us and they say, we have systems that can protect you from anybody to get to you when you are worship. They're asking money. We don't have that money. Why would somebody has to fear for their life when they are worshiping their God? This is a place that they will seek refuge from everything else. But unfortunately now it's becoming a target. I applaud you, those of you who are here, because you care. That's why you are here. And every one of you, why you are here is because you care for the well-being of our country. And may God bless you. May God take care of you, and thank you.
Thank you, and that actually beautifully brings us right into our next question. The fact that you are all here means that you have come with open, albeit broken hearts, and open minds. But we know that understanding and education is what helps people at times like these. So to promote understanding and greater tolerance, I'm going to ask the people on the panel, what do you want people who are not members of your faith community to know about your faith and or your community that they can bring back to their own communities and share in the interest of promoting tolerance and understanding?
I think one of the things that acts against respect and understanding is painting with a very broad brush, believing that everybody who is X does or believes or is Y. So, for the Jewish community, I think it's really important to know that, as I said, 2 Jews, 3 opinions, that we are an increasingly diverse community. The earliest Jews who came to North America were, by and large, coming from Spanish and Portuguese Jews who had moved to Amsterdam because they could more or less openly practice Judaism there. So they were Sephardic Jews, Jews who trace their roots back to Spain. And then, starting in 1881, huge influx of Jews from Eastern Europe, fleeing pogroms, fleeing massacres. But increasingly, the Jewish community is not just a white Ashkenazi community. There are lots of Jews of color. So one of the things I want you to think of when you think about the Jewish community is not just the old white man with the beard, or even the young white woman with a kippah. Okay, relatively young. I want you to know that Jews have an incredible diversity of opinion about Israel and Palestine. It's hard for us to talk to each other sometimes. I want you to know that in Judaism, one of the fundamental beliefs, we don't have a creed, but one of the fundamental beliefs is that every human being is created b'tselem Elohim, in God's image. That doesn't mean our shape, our outward shape. It means our ability to think, our ability to make choices, our ability to learn, our ability to speak. The things that make us human are things we all share. You don't have to believe in God to believe that every person is of infinite worth. You should also know that there are plenty of atheist Jews. Judaism is a culture, a civilization, a way of life, not simply a faith tradition. And at the moment, I would like people to know that Jews are reacting in many different ways. Some are scared, some are angry, some are despairing, some are energized, some are numb, some are eternal optimists. And just like any other group of human beings, you have to talk to, and even more importantly, listen to the one that you're face to face with.
There's an old Arab maxim: people are enemies of that which they know not. So ignorance and fear are the 2 pillars of intolerance and prejudice. Pope Benedict XVI said, interreligious dialogue is in fact a vital necessity on which in large measure our future depends. And so for Catholic Christians, we certainly want to break down those walls of ignorance and fear. In these kinds of settings, I always like to talk about a survey that was conducted some years ago in Holland. And the questionnaire said, what motivated righteous Gentiles, non-Jews, to be rescuers of Jews in Hitler's regime? And the response was not what you'd expect. The more deeply religious, the more likely to be a rescuer. Or a political agenda, more liberal or more conservative people tended to rescue more or less. What the survey showed were 2 things that determined, or at least led one to be a rescuer. First, did the family have Jewish friends? And secondly, what did you hear around the dinner table about Jews? And that determined the response, perhaps to be a rescuer.
I'm going to share something that Reverend Deb was talking about. And by the way, all of us at this, Rev Deb, all of us at this table have known each other for many years. And that is that I think probably most people here are not aware that of the total number of Buddhists in the nation, half are who we refer to as heritage Jews. They're coming from Vietnam. They're coming from Jews. Jews. Although I'm Jewish, by the way. So there are many Buddhists who come from around the world, and they've come in America, and they constitute half the Buddhists in the United States. They're all refugees, or the children of refugees. And then the other half are adoptees. They're coming from whatever faith that they have been born into, or in some cases, no faith that they were born into. And as Deb was saying, we don't always agree. We come from different cultural traditions as well as different Buddhist traditions. And so therefore, we're not painted as, people look and they say, oh, you're Buddhist, you must be Tibetan. Well, no, I'm a Japanese Buddhist. Actually, I'm an American Buddhist. And so we see that difference. The other thing that I want them to know is that as Buddhists, we are individually responsible for everyone else. And we look at the hatred and the divisiveness that we see in our country right now, and we have to be partly responsible for it. Not as a victim, but have we not done enough to change that temperature? And so, with my brother here, last spring, I asked Brother Albany if, perhaps many know, perhaps many do not know, that Buddhists are not always nice guys. As a matter of fact, we have some pretty nasty people as Buddhists, and especially in Burma right now. One of the largest refugee crises in the world is coming from Burma, and it's Buddhists who are persecuting Muslim Rohingya from the Rakhine province of Burma. And so I asked my brother if he would bring some people together from the Rohingya population in his mosque, and we got together last spring. I think it was in May, if I'm not mistaken. And we got together last May so that I could say to them, I'm sorry. We have to take responsibility for what goes on. And then, by the way, after that, we had a great picnic at our temple with Sangha members and Rohingya. Because the next step is make them your brothers and sisters. It's not enough just to say, I'm sorry, and go about your business. What are we going to do next? We're going to create relationships. And so I think that to those answering the Chazan's question, that we have to go beyond just looking and trying to solve the problem. We have to do something about it, and the way we do something about it is putting ourselves into the equation as individuals, as Buddhists, as Jews, as Muslims, as Christians. Each of us is responsible for what we see around us. We may be victims in some cases, and I think the people in Pittsburgh were in fact victims, but that doesn't mean that we become victims overall. We have to be part of the solution.
The panel here is not people that are new to one another. We do things, we have a lot of work that we do together. To answer the question is that one of the things that we tell our congregation about other religions is the fact that we are in this one world, one globe, called Earth. We all came and being created from one God. And we all share this one small ball floating in the space. So, we have to live together. We have to love one another. We have to work together to make it better for ourselves. And in our faith, maybe most of you know, but those of you who do not know, it's one of the fundamental commandments of the Quran that whatever people believe is not your job. It says, lakum dinakum waliyadin. Whatever people believe is not your job. Just take care of your own only. So in Islam, a person is not to be concerned of what other people believe. So that makes us, as long as you are not concerned with what they believe, live with them, treat with them, interact with them like a brother and a sister. And just to add, last Saturday at 8 o'clock when we had the evening prayer, I shared it with my congregation, this story that maybe some of us will appreciate. There was a grandfather who wants to give a very good advice to his grandson. And he said to him, listen, grandson, I have 2 wolves inside me fighting. One of these wolves is evil. It's hateful. It does despicable things. And the other one is good. And it's peaceful. It's very humble and human. It exercises humility. And it's full of love and kindness and generosity. The young man says, which one will win? The 2 of wolves are fighting inside you, which one will win? I responded, the one you feed. Those 2 wolves, the one you feed, my grandson, will win. So, meaning, I told my congregation that there are 2 sides of the coin, and where you go will win, and you will pay the price. And in front of God, when you go, you will pay the price of being on the wrong side.
In just this past week alone, issues about immigration, blackface, and hatred have dominated our news. And we heard earlier from County Executive McCoy that hate crimes are up in nearly every major city in the United States. Anti-Semitism particularly. What can we do in our places of worship to not only raise awareness, but to lower those numbers? And how can our places of worship work with the greater Albany community to help raise that awareness and lower those numbers?
In Pittsburgh and other places where these horrific events have taken place, it's become a little bit of a trend to see a poster or a banner that says, less prayer, more action. In other words, there's a little bit of a sentiment out there that it really is kind of useless to gather together in interfaith or denominational prayer. That's not going to bring those lives back or make our country any safer or better. And I would respectfully disagree, and I would do that with a quote from one of our great mystic and brilliant woman theologian saints from the 15th century, Dr. St. Teresa of Avila. She said, we work as if everything depended upon ourselves, and we pray as if everything depended upon God. So it's both and, never either or. But prayer, of course, always needs to be prayer in action. So it's kind of cheating to ask God to take away the violence and be with victims when we ourselves do not do the necessary busy work of making the world in which we live a better place. So it's always prayer in action. It's always both and. I'm wearing a little pendant, so I need the zoom lens to catch it. But it's a pendant of a sculpture outside our Catholic cathedral next to the New York State Museum. And it's a very, very large, probably 20 feet tall sculpture that was made to commemorate an event of bringing Christians and Jews together in 1986. The program hosted by Bishop Howard Hubbard and Rabbi Martin Silverman. Anyway, there was a sculpture created to commemorate that event, and it's a Jew and a Christian in embrace. And of course, it doesn't just need to be a Christian or a Jew, it can be anybody who is other than ourselves to be in embrace, and they're one for
I was listening to Father James speak about that. It reminded me of the Jewish tale of the 36, and I'll paraphrase this. There's 36 good people, the righteous, upon which the world revolves. And I think that is an image that, going along with Father James, that's an image that I keep in my mind, that we all have to be righteous in order to experience less violence, less bigotry, less discrimination, etc. That it's not up just to the other person, but it's up to each of us. And I think that it's sometimes we might take righteous in relation to Hashem, to God, but we also take righteous in relation to our individual actions. And so I think that each of us, I think I can speak for all of us at this table, each of us in our own way attempts to do that. And I think that begins to dispel that wolf that is feeding off of anger that Brother Albany referred to. That righteousness is not just a matter of our relationship to the divine, but it's also our relationship to each other.
In fact, those of you who may not know and may not be religious, religion is good and it's dangerous. It's a powerful tool for the good and very dangerous ticking bomb if you use it the other way. That's why Ireland has been in war for how many years? So, religion is dangerous unless it's controlled. And when the imams are in meetings or annual conferences, one of the things we emphasize is you have to put people in touch with God and not the opposite. How do you do that? We have to teach that all human beings are equal. That's every book, every religion teaches that all people are equal in the eyes of God, which is true. So there is no space or no place for hating people or belittling them or seeing them as different. And particularly when our conferences, annual conferences, what we teach is that maybe some people when they are old, it's really difficult to train an old dog, as they say. We have to emphasize on the children, the younger generations, and teach them that fundamental of this religion is that We are all equal. There is no one human being less than the other. And you are not responsible for what they believe. They have the right to believe what they believe. The only thing you do is think of yourself and your connection with your own God and your hereafter life. Hoping that children will take it from us and they will implement it.
Judaism is a religion of action. The basic building block of Judaism is the mitzvah. Literally, mitzvah means commandment. When I ask my 12-year-olds who are studying for bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah who they feel commanded by, as you might expect, parents, teachers, coaches, God usually doesn't make the list. I'm coming from a liberal end of the Jewish spectrum. You would find different answers in other Jewish communities. But in my community, I talk about the mitzvah as an obligation or a responsibility. Because a sense of obligation and responsibility can be generated from inside, no matter how connected you do or do not feel to God, as you may or may not understand God. There are traditionally 613 mitzvot, 365 thou shalt nots, as if every day of the year is saying, don't do a sin on me. And 248 thou shalts, which 1,500 years ago apparently was the number of bones that the rabbis believed were in our bodies. As if every bone in your body is crying out, do a mitzvah with me. And mitzvah has entered Jewish language as good deed. I mean, if you ask, again, outside of Orthodox communities, if you ask 100 Jews what mitzvah means, 98 of them will probably say good deed. And that's because so many of them are. Out of 613, there's maybe half a dozen, maybe a couple more, which address how you believe or what you feel. The others are about what you do or you don't do. I think this is why Judaism has produced an awful lot of activists. Right? People who never set foot in a synagogue, but have inherited this tradition that you try and leave the world better than you found it. But in Judaism, mitzvot traditionally that's the plural, are traditionally divided up into two categories. One is ben adam lechavero, between one human being and another. The other category is ben adam lemakom, between a human being and, this my favorite name for God, the omnipresent. Literally, the place, the one who is everywhere. They roughly fall into, between one human being and another, those are how you treat your fellow human beings. Social justice comes under that rubric. And the other are, roughly speaking, the ritual mitzvot, the ritual commandments. And one of the things that sustains me, and I think sustains my congregation, particularly in moments like this, is honoring whichever part of that you need at the moment. Some people deal with hatred, anger, despair, fear by going out and getting more active. Some people need the comfort of the ritual, the family Shabbat dinner table, or the friends, right? The inner support for oneself. And probably most of us need both of them at different times. So one of the ways that my tradition has to go forward and make a difference is by using all of our tradition. I'm not saying you got to do this or you got to do that, but understanding that there's the taking care of ourselves and there's the going out and making the world a better place, and all of it needs to be honored.
Thank you. Before we close, we're going to open it up for one or two questions from the audience. So if there's somebody who has a question, please raise your hand, and Mary will come with a mic so that you can be heard.
So I guess it's true. I am an non-religious Jew who is now pretty seriously into Buddhism, sitting with the Thich Nhat Hanh Sangha.
So I guess it's true. I am a non-religious Jew who is now pretty seriously into Buddhism, sitting with the Thich Nhat Hanh Sangha. And I know that for me now too, I feel like the Buddhists have traditionally, one way seems to be not to get involved in politics. And I don't know, I'm at a loss now because I just feel like, again, it's not enough to just be, in a sense, doing what we're doing here, but it is time to really get politically active. And so I'm just wondering what the kind of Buddhists are feeling about that.
It's perhaps ironic that this evening our group meets on Wednesday evenings, and this evening the discussion is about Buddhism Politics. So I've been giving it some thought recently. And the fact of the matter is, I think each of us, it doesn't matter what our religious traditions are, each of us as a citizen has a responsibility to act in our faith's tradition, to do those things politically that we feel are consistent with our tradition. And so, I would, by the way, as being a Buddhist scholar, I would disagree that Buddhists have never been politically active. I could go into detail, but I won't. But they've been very politically active, as a matter of fact, for both good and evil, I have to say. And so, but today, I think it's especially important, and one of the ways I'm going to end my discussion tonight, this evening, is to say, now that we've finished talking about Buddhism and politics, go vote next Tuesday.
I would just like to add heroes and a focus on heroes. There was a wonderful story about the ER people at the hospital who treated the shooter. And they were Jewish, and this shooter came and saying all these horrible things, and yet they treated him with professionalism and care, although I don't know if I could have done that. And I think we need to ask the media to focus more on the goodness that is happening in the community, and we stop focusing on just the horror and the bad news, which of course sells stories, but it's like bad weather and good weather. We need really to ask for more good stories, for more heroes, and to applaud them whenever we see them.
Hi, I would like to add something, and is that we as humans, we learn, each and one of us, we learn by imitating others. The way we learn to talk, the way we learn to walk is by imitating our parents. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with studies of kids that have been raised by animals. They don't talk. They walk in four legs because they are raised by animals. They don't imitate humans. They haven't seen any humans. So what I want each and one of us to take from today is what we do matter. And the thing is, we can impact others. It's like a wildfire. We do good, people are going to see that we do good, and they're going to imitate that thing. They're going to imitate goodness, happiness. And there's a lot of hate out there. And I just have to say, how can we battle the hate? Love. And most of the time, we don't agree with something, as here they've been saying, we don't agree, but let's respect that. We have so many differences, but let's respect each other. And hopefully one day we will have a better world.
Increasingly, the response to these tragic events that happen all too many times, we hear thoughts and prayers to everyone, and it's become just gratuitous. And I think prayer, of course, is important, but I'm tired of that response. I think that it's so disingenuous. What can we do beyond thoughts and prayers?
Vote. Well, first of all, get involved in politics. Vote, phone bank, run for office, make donations. Go to your local school district and get them to institute a program that builds, I don't like the word tolerance because behind it is the word tolerate, like put up with, that builds respect for diversity. My wife and I have adopted 4 kids through foster care. 3 are black, 1 is white. My daughter, who was 13 last year, was just utterly fed up when she went back to school after Thanksgiving with her hair in braids. And she's been in school since she was in kindergarten. And something about that, the stupid comments. It's a like 98% white school. My daughter's black. It pushed us over the edge. And this year, finally, after the school district had been talking about it for a couple of years, they've got the Anti-Defamation League's World of is it World of Difference? Is that their program? Yeah, World of Difference program, and which works with everybody from administration to the lunch lady. Right? It's not just for students. But I remember I went online and I researched programs, and there are 4 or 5 really good, proven. Bring them into the school. There are even subsidies from some of them. Right? Work on your school district. That's the children part. Train them up the way they should go. So there's an opportunity. There are so many different ways to get involved locally. For myself, I go on sabbatical starting tomorrow. I'm really grateful this was today. I'm going to be volunteering, besides taking care of myself by painting watercolors, I'm going to be volunteering with the Poor People's Campaign. And I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to be doing, right? I may end up doing office work, that's just fine. It frees somebody else up to go on the front lines and do the activist stuff that maybe I'm not as good at. And I'm going to be working with Better Angels. Have you heard of Better Angels? Better Angels, as in Lincoln's second inaugural, in the middle of the Civil War, talking about the better angels of our nature, calling on that to help the country not break apart. Sound familiar? So Better Angels is an entirely, evenly, at every level, is run by an even number of people from the red tribe and people from the blue tribe. I was at a workshop. I was an observer, but I was at a 7-hour workshop in Gilderman Library on Saturday, led by a red moderator and blue moderator, with about equal numbers of participants, using marriage and family therapy techniques to invite people to listen to each other, to pay attention to the stereotypes that they have of each other and that other people have of them. I was in tears several times during that day as I listened to people with whom I know I have political disagreements say things about humanity that I believe to my core. Getting involved, and they're not the only group doing this work, getting involved in work that rehumanizes people across divides. Right? And I mean, I'm looking around this room and I'm really delighted that it's not entirely white, but if you're white, you got a job to do. You got people to reach out to. You got to get out of your comfort zone. We got to get out of our comfort zone. Again, there are so many places, just locally, if you've got an hour a week that you could get involved. And honestly, doing something helps with the despair.
I just wanted to add to what Rev. Deb is saying, and that is that prayer is the beginning. That's not the total answer. Someone once said to me that praying is speaking to God and meditation is listening. But then we have to go, and after we've come to a conclusion, whatever that is, to use the wisdom that we find through the prayer or through the meditation to go out and do something. So prayer is a way to make a connection, but it's not necessarily the end of the process. And so I think that some people find courage, they find resolve, and they find what is within them that can give them the strength to go and do something. So let's not diminish the role of prayer. It's very important, but it is the beginning of the process, not the end.
And the same with the call to vote. I have voted in every single election since I turned 21. I'm old enough to register for 21. But it is not a magic solution. And I go back to my comments about the Holland rescuers. Developing friendship and saying the right things about people around the dining room table are more important, I think, because there is no guarantee that one's political perspective is going to necessarily bring about the good, the true, and the beautiful. Having said that, I want to be sure that our time is not spent without thanking County Executive Dan McCoy for hosting this gathering and the College of St. Rose for providing hospitality. I want to quote something that I quoted in the presence of Imam Imar at our Ramadan dinner at City Hall in Albany, which is to say that the Dongan Charter that formed the city of Albany in 1686 was the first charter in the New World to guarantee religious liberty. So let's hope and pray that we, Albanites, if that's such a word, can be a beacon and a light to how we should be behaving ourselves.
I would like to thank Albany County Executive Daniel McCoy and his entire staff for arranging this wonderful forum this morning. Thank you to President Terrence DeFranco and the College of St. Rose for providing this beautiful space. Thank you to our panelists, who I think added a little bit of healing to all of our lives today, to all of you for coming. I'd like to close with a story that happened this past Sunday. Of course, the news was very raw to all of us. And we all came to religious school on Sunday morning. Our families were a little bit nervous. Our children didn't really know what was going on. They had heard a lot of stuff. Our parents were very frightened about coming to synagogue. Our officers and our board members came out in numbers and were there just to stand together as community. And I decided to drop my regular lesson plans for Sunday morning and instead talk to the kids about exactly what it means to be part of community. So I asked them to give their ideas on what it means to be part of a community, and then specifically what it means to be part of a Jewish community. And one 5th grade boy, who was particularly insightful, said, "Being part of the Jewish community means that there are people that I've never even met, and they don't even live near me, but they are part of my community." That was healing for me. I think today, knowing that there are people in this room who have never met before, but we are all part of one community. We are part of the Albany community. And we stand together in the face of this hatred. And because of that, the hatred will not win. Thank you for being here.